Hey guys, I'm Naya and welcome back to the channel. For today's video, I decided we're going to be talking about Photon Hypernova and we're going to be discussing the top 5 cards, or in one case, it's going to be the entire archetype, which you all know is Kashtira and its support. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Basically, we're just going to go over the best cards and the ones I think you should be looking out for when, purchasing the set or just getting ready for it. They are also not ranked from best to worst or anything like that. It's just the top 5 cards. So the first one we're going to be mentioning is going to be Bestial Baldrake. So with this card, I think it's pretty much one of the best Bestials, and Magnemite is already insane. Lubelion is also really nice, but like Baldrake is just incredible. It functions as a hand trap just like the other ones, being able to be special summoned by banishing a light or dark monster from either grave, and it's a quick effect if your opponent controls a monster. But it has a second effect, where if the opponent special summons either a Fusion Synchro, Xyz, Ritual, or Link monster or monsters, you can tribute one other light or dark monster and banish one of them. So you do target it. It's targeting, but it's still insane. It's banishing, which is like one of the best ways of removal. Like banishing and spinning to the deck is just incredible, because usually monsters will not have protection from that, and they also won't trigger like tier effects would, for example, when being sent to the grave by card effect. So if you just manage to banish something your opponent puts on the field, it's really nice. It's just an amazing hand trap, and functioning with the second effect as like a form of removal as well. I think it's just so good. And I'm really excited for this card to come out. So, I already mentioned Kashtira. I'm going to talk about the entire archetype. Probably the best card among all of them would be a Rise card. So you could put this, second spot on this list to either a Rise card or the entire support. But basically, and I'm only talking about the good support. So I guess I shouldn't address it as the entire Kashtira stuff, but the best cards that are actually going to be played. So I wanted to mention Kashtira because, judging by the OCG, it is going to have at least some impact on our meta. Not only is it going to be played in the tier limit deck as an addition, as an engine, to be able to tie all of the engines together with the field spell Fenrir, with also tier limit Kashtira. It's just a very nice addition, and I have, featured OCG deck lists and talk about all of that on the channel before, so you probably know what I'm talking about. And when it comes to the pure Kashtira stuff, basically the deck is going to have, like I said, some impact. It might not be among the top ones, but it is an annoying stun deck to deal with. And I say it might not be the best because it's a ton of options out there for you to counter that deck, but I think it's still going to have a spot in the meta. So I wanted to mention that in particular. And with that, because Kashtira stuff is obviously support for the archetype, we could give an honorable mention to everything else receiving support in Photon Hypernova. It is one of those sets where it is going to boost some archetypes. And among the top 5 cards, not only as an honorable mention, but on the actual list, I also wanted to mention Big Welcome Labyrinth. So with this chap card, I think Labyrinth will be able to really solidify itself as the top of Rogue, or even better, as a contender in the meta. Chap decks overall have some downsides about them, but when you're able to introduce a card to an archetype where it gives the deck more consistency, ways of seeing your engine, and also has a good effect in its second effect, it's just really nice. Because overall, some other decks, they are also, that's the number one thing, they are also a bit more consistent. But in a chap deck, I feel like you get overwhelmed so easily. You are inherently slower. So if you don't draw perfectly to stop the opponent, I think it's going to just get out of hand where you can't really come into the game. And like I said, consistency is a struggle. And with the Big Welcome Labyrinth is covering all of the bases, it's tying into the engine. It also has a nice effect as a trap card. So I do think Labyrinth is going to be a deck you probably need to look out for moving forward. So I did want to feature this card on the list. So the next one is going to be Triple Tactic Tasking. So I think this one is obvious. It needs to be among the top 5 cards from the set. It's really nice. And it's really interesting to me also how people are sort of indifferent as to how much play Triple Tactic Tasking is actually going to be seeing. So it's a bit easier to activate it than Triple Tactic Talent, a similar card, because your opponent only had to have activated an effect during that turn. So it isn't only the main phase, just like Talent says. And it's really nice, to say the least, at least in my opinion. Like, I think it is going to have impact. I think it is going to see play. And I think it's also going to be interesting seeing how people try to counter it or play around it. And also how people are going to deck build with the combination of Chipotactic tasking and its targets. So to get to the actual effect, in case you don't know by now, basically, if your opponent has activated a monster effect that turn, you're going to be able to activate it, and you can either set a normal spell or trap card, but it cannot be activated if you set it from the deck, or you can search it if your opponent controls a monster. And if you do search it, you can actually activate it as well. So there's no restriction placed on it. And if you only have to set, it's not that bad. You can still set a trap card. You can set something like Impermanence, which is really generic. Or, you know, you can get to any card in your archetype that you maybe need, if it's a normal spell or trap card, or you can get to, again, just generic things, talent, harpies, dark ruler. Like, there's so many options for you. And when it comes to the deck building, obviously, because you're able to search it, some builds started to run only one-off copies of cards like dark ruler, cards like, well, harpies is a one, but you get the point. Like, you can only run one if you want, because it's going to be searchable anyway, in case you're going to want to get to it. Now, again, there's a couple downsides when it comes to you having to be reliant on your opponent. So that's, I think, never a really good thing, because you can't predict the unpredictable, what your opponent is going to do. But sometimes in a meta where you know a bunch of effects are going to go off in your turn, it's almost obvious that the card is going to be live. So I think it is going to be dependent on the type of format we are in, but still definitely a card worth mentioning on this list. And for the last card, or two cards, I wanted to mention both fusions. So the two fusions that are going to be added to the Bistio branded Despia strategy. You know what I'm talking about. So it's basically what used to be branded Despia and has now the addition of Bistio. So it pretty much adopted that engine into its own. And we are talking about Lindworm and also the Grand Finale Dragon. So both of them got added to some of the lists we are seeing for post-Photon Hypernova. I do think, and a lot of people think, that they are going to be seeing play when they actually come out, because you are able to summon them in your opening combo, get both of them on the field, and they have really nice effects. They're able to negate a monster, bounce a monster, send your card from the deck or extra deck to the graveyard, and you are getting advantage from those monsters being sent away, if they're light or dark, of course. And you can also special summon a Despia from the extra deck or a Dogmatica monster from your main deck. So there's a ton of things you're able to do. And both of them, like I said, are summoned in the opening combo. And also the material on the Grand Guignol Cartesia is very, very easily accessible through Fusion Deployment, which is also seeing play in some of the lists. So there's a ton of options right now. I think with the branded deck for you, you can play so many things, so many versions. And I do think it's going to be one of those decks that just keeps, you know, being there, being just omnipresent, unless they like ban branded fusion, because it's just so adaptable, I think. And it is going to be one of the top contenders. So for these two cards to round off this list, I think that's pretty much perfect. So if there is anything that I maybe missed that you think is going to be one of the top 5 cards from the set, because there's so many things, like there's obviously a lot of good things about this set, but these ones I think just stood out to me and I wanted to mention them. However, if there is anything else you would like to mention, please write down in the comments and I'll gladly read all of you guys' responses. So if you like this video, please like it, sub to the channel, check out all of the social media, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.